I'm always bad at coming up with openers for these.
You don't really need to come up with an opener. You can just say, hey.
Hey! It's another episode of the Bedroom Brainiacs podcast. So, if you're watching this episode right now, it's either the holiday season is coming up, or the holiday season just happened, or it's happening right now.
Or it happened a while ago and you're just playing catch up.
Yeah, one of those things are true, but we are recording this during the holiday season. And today we are going to talk about something that you may experience during the holiday season. And that is coming out to your family.
And not just like coming out as it is, like TM, like trademark, but just like sharing parts of yourself with people who know you one way, but you have maybe grown or changed in time, and you haven't really shared those newer parts of yourself.
Yeah, and it's people who you don't see very often. So when I was thinking of doing this episode, I was just thinking of people who you are compelled to interact with and be around who you don't see very often. So there may be parts of yourself that, like you said, you don't share with them. How do you navigate that? How do you navigate? Do you keep those parts of yourself hidden for the sake of keeping the peace? Do you reveal those parts of yourself? And this is something we're going to talk about in the episode of, are you defiantly just, be who you are no matter what and be loud and proud, as we said while we were planning, or do you avoid people altogether? Or do you just hide who you are in order to keep the peace? And these are all things that we're going to talk about. But before we do, I'm going to do things a little differently, and I'm going to tell you now to like, comment, and subscribe, because according to the analytics, some of you stopped watching right at around this point right here. So before you go, make sure you click that like, comment, and subscribe button, because that really helps us out. So, getting to today's topic, when we talk about coming out, I want to talk about, when I brought this topic to you as an idea for something that I wanted to do, you said something that to me was really profound, is the word. It's just something that I hadn't thought of. And once you said it, I was like, oh, that makes complete sense. But it's something I had never thought of before, which makes sense, is the difference between privacy and secrecy.
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to coming out, just describe what you meant by that and the distinction between privacy and secrecy as it relates to coming out.
Okay. Yeah, so, there's a like very strong narrative, especially now, right? Like, we live in this world of social media. People make their livings putting their lives on the internet. And so there's this like narrative and pressure to like put your whole life out there and have no secrets. And the idea of that is often paired with like these like very defensive and like powerful narratives about like, own your identity, be who you are, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And like, that's great. And I'm not knocking that. But also, there's collateral damage from that experience. So like these social media narratives have really kind of overrun this idea of privacy. We have this idea that like we aren't allowed to be private anymore. And like as these narratives get like mushy, I don't know how else to explain it. They like conflate. That's the word I'm looking for. They sort of become one weird mush or goo of more than one idea.
Yeah.
Is this idea that like if you aren't telling everybody everything about yourself all the time, then you must be ashamed of those parts that you're not sharing. And so when I talk about this idea of there's a difference between privacy and secrecy, what I'm differentiating is secrecy, keeping things secret is damaging. It's damaging when you keep secrets from other people. It's damaging when you keep secrets from yourself. It's damaging when you feel obligated to tuck your life away in a very secret way because of, generally speaking, shame and fear and embarrassment about those aspects of self. That really shrinks your self-worth and your self-trust, and it really damages any opportunity to build expansive relationships because people don't know you. Privacy, on the other hand, is this idea of like, people don't need to know me if I don't want them to. And that relationships can have different parameters and different styles of connection. You know, I frequent a restaurant pretty consistently, and the bartender there knows my drink. One time I went and it was really crowded and I'm waiting for a table, and all of a sudden the bartender comes around and hands me my cocktail, the cocktail that I like there, which was incredible. Like, what? Shout out. Like, they're great. But like, they don't know my proclivities in the bedroom.
Right.
And they don't need to. That's not what that relationship is built on. That doesn't mean that it's not valuable. It doesn't mean that it's not a relationship that I'm invested in. It simply means that like, what we need to know about each other and what we want to know about each other is different than maybe what I would want to know about a potential sexual partner, or what I would want to know about my cousin or my very close friend.
So I'm going to ask you some more questions about that. But first, this is so relatable to me because I get a lot of questions about my personal life from coworkers a lot. And coworkers ask questions about my personal life, and they're seemingly innocent about, hey, I saw you talking to a person. Who is that person to you? What do you guys have going on? Who's this? Who's that? And my response to that is, why do you feel like you need to know that? Because to me, that's not necessary information that I want to share with you while we're working side by side. That is not information that you need to know, so I'm not going to share it. And people get really upset with me about that sometimes.
Yeah, well, again, right, like some of that is that narrative from social media of like, you have to constantly have your life out on display for everyone to observe, for everybody to participate in. It's a group activity now. And that you don't get to keep part of like any of your life. None of your life is just for you anymore.
Yeah.
There's this like, it's a group activity energy that is like very loud. And then the other part is like, everybody has a different line. And everybody has in Good Sex by Dr. Candace Nicole Hargens, she references a research project where they talk about different types of intimacy, and everybody, like, social intimacy is a different type of intimacy than sexual intimacy, for instance, and different people have different levels of comfort and different levels of need with social intimacy. And it can feel very like off-putting if somebody like makes an ask for social intimacy and it gets shut down. That doesn't mean that you have any sort of obligation to tell them anything. It's just a reality of like, different people have different wants and needs, and that's a very generous read on what could also just be somebody who wants to gossip.
Yeah, no, I will say that for a lot of people who asked those questions of me, my read was not very generous. And I think that I communicated that clearly, and I think that was the source of some of the conflict, because I think I made that clear and that was felt and received, which I'm okay with. But I want to talk about boundaries soon. But I want to stay on this a little bit, because when we talk about coming out, and this is me and my just layman's understanding of the process, and not having to have discussions with people, not having to have discussions with people in the role of a therapist, not having the knowledge and the education that you have. For me, as someone who's not very knowledgeable about it, it seems like an all or nothing thing. Like, there is no distinction between privacy and secrecy. It's just coming out means you are just, if you're showing up to someone's house for Thanksgiving and your family's there, if you coming out as a decision of I'm going to lay it all out there, everything I do all the time and everything about who I am, or I'm not going to share anything and be completely closed off. And what you're saying is there's some nuance there, and you getting to decide what coming out means for you. Each individual gets to decide what coming out means and how much they're willing to share, and having an awareness of while having an awareness of what those decisions mean moving forward. So how would you talk to a client, or how would you talk to our viewers if they had a conversation about, okay, I understand the difference between I don't want to keep secrets, but I want to have some privacy. How do I make that distinction? How do I decide what is something that I want to keep private versus something that I don't want to keep a secret anymore?
Every time we have a conversation, I'm going to go, well, therapy really helps. I say that not because I don't think that these conversations are valuable, but because that's like a self-exploration. It's not something necessarily that you're just going to go, oh yeah, I know exactly where that line is. And also having a therapist with you helps support you through the process of the likelihood that that line's gonna move around, and that you might overshare or like want to scale that back and not be able to, because once something's out, it's out. Or you might undershare and then, be in a position where you feel lonely later, right? Like an extreme version of your example where you were saying like you kept your private life very private, and then all of a sudden you're like, why do I not have any coworkers who I can like reach out to who will maybe like cover my shift or something? And it's like, well, you didn't give them any social intimacy. Like they viewed you as a total stranger.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, oh, how do I correct for that? Well, having a therapist there to kind of like highlight that might be what's happening, to give you a definition for what social intimacy is. Right. But in the like very short reality, right, of just like, oh crud, I have to go to Aunt Joni's tomorrow. And I want to figure out how I want to kind of present and what I want to do, is like sit down with yourself and like take a few minutes, take a little bit of an inventory, think about what are the stories you're telling yourself about why you aren't sharing this with people. If you've got like a blatantly homophobic like auntie and you're going to her house and and you want to go for insert huge list of reasons why you want to be there, and she's the one hosting, you might go, it is in my best self-interest to not bring this up at auntie's house.
Yes.
But if you're going somewhere, but if you're not taking that inventory, what the story you might be telling yourself is, it's never safe, not with anybody, not for any reason. And what might actually be a more accurate narrative is, it's uncomfortable all the time, but in some spaces it is safe. Or in some spaces I'd like to check for safety. Right? And so this might be sharing just some small things. Sharing about, oh, one of my queer friends is coming over on Black Friday because they couldn't go home. And just kind of like, and maybe that queer friend is made up. A little fib to test the waters.
Let's test the waters a little bit. Yeah.
But, I also think at the end of the day, one of the things that I think is really important, and this will go into what you were saying about wanting to talk about boundaries. The boundaries that, like, when you're thinking about your privacy and you're thinking about these parts of yourself, right? Because I'm not just talking about being queer. We're talking about any part of yourself, any part of your identity that is valuable and important to you, that is maybe not outwardly read just by existing. There is a reality of, when we think about our identities, if we were to externalize them, right? And like have them as like, oh, I have this museum of myself. You would have things that people can see in the museum sort of just like as soon as they walk in. And these are the durable things, right? These are the things that like the guy at Wawa is going to interact with.
Right.
They get knocked down, they get bumped around. they can fall off the little pedestal that they're on and they're just going to bounce off the ground. Maybe like any scuff mark you can wipe right off. Like these are the durable parts of self that you have such a deep like connection and trust with that you're like, oh, yeah, I don't care if the guy at Wawa knows that I have curly hair.
Right.
Right. And then we think a little bit more about the museum and you think like, well, some of the stuff in this museum maybe needs to be behind glass. And I want to show some people about it, but like you have to put on white gloves, right? Those handler's gloves.
Yeah.
And you have to take it out with the handler's gloves. In my brain, I'm thinking of the Stanley Cup.
See, I'm thinking of the Philly Art Museum, and if you step too close, then a loud beep goes off and alerts the guards.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're your own guards.
Yeah.
Right? So like that's part of what is challenging about this is like you are operating the whole museum because you are the museum. But I'm thinking about the guy with the Stanley Cup and he has to put on the gloves and he's holding the Stanley Cup. Those hockey players had to earn that cup. And if like when you give it to them, like you're trusting them with it.
Right.
And now this doesn't always go well for the Stanley Cup. And that's a reality of like you don't have 100% certainty that it's going to go well when you share something with somebody. But that's a little bit of what I mean about testing the waters. If I lend somebody a book and I go, hey, they mention they want to try the book. I lend them the book. The book comes back to me in good condition. I'm much more likely to lend them another book. If I lend them a book and it comes back and it's drenched in toilet water, I'm probably not gonna, I'm gonna ask what happened.
I'm gonna ask, why didn't you dry it first? Second, how did this happen? How bad does it have to be that it's obvious that it's toilet water? Because it could be any water, but if you know right away it's toilet water, what happened?
Woof, yeah. But exactly, right? Like,
unless it's a book by Norman Mailer, in which case it can stay in the toilet.
It can stay in the toilet. But yeah, so we think about this idea of like how people handle the information that we give them. Are they gentle with it? Do they put it somewhere safe? Right? Like if I share something with you, I'm not, unless I give you explicit permission to go, and you can go tell everybody all about this.
Yeah.
Like, are you careful with my information? You know, and that might be like information about a sports team that I like, or it might be something much more, and I don't get to decide what's important for anybody but me.
Right.
So when we think about this idea of privacy and this idea of like, you asked the question of like, how does somebody kind of figure out where their line is in regards to privacy? What's in the like protected part of your museum? What are the fragile parts? The parts that you haven't built up in a way that it feels really durable. And that doesn't, I want to make just kind of a clear point that like, I'm not saying that we all need to build up every part of ourselves to be super durable all the time. We are allowed to be fragile. That is part of being a human being. But when we are fragile, part of privacy is figuring out how we want to share that and who we want to share that with.
Well, and I think that kind of speaks to why therapy is so important and why so many people have misconceptions about what therapy is and what it's supposed to do. Because I think a lot of people want therapy to be like an IKEA manual, where the manual is written and you can pass it. Once it's written, you can pass it to different people and have it apply to them. And when I say IKEA manual, I mean like maybe you can go on a Reddit post, maybe you can watch a podcast. But once the answer is there, it's there. It's like a math problem, and once it's solved, here's the answer. But what you're saying is, or what I'm hearing is, a therapist or you may recognize an issue and you may look for a solution. And it sounds like a client coming to you example is going to go, hey, I have a problem. What's the solution? And you go, well, I don't know. We got to do some work to figure that out.
I do say I don't know a lot.
And that's good because we've all met that person who has an answer for everything. And at some point you're like, listen, I've asked you 50 different questions and you've had an immediate answer. You're lying. No one knows all of this stuff all the time. Sometimes you just don't know.
Well, and also, like, you're the expert on you.
Yes.
So, like, if I come to you and I'm like, Tyrese, I got this thing going on, and it's just like I keep getting stuck at this one part of my routine, and it just keeps happening, and it just keeps happening, and you're
And
like...
I'll say, well, have you tried getting a journal?
Right? I'm the expert on me.
Yes.
But most of us don't want to be because it's hard. Like, it's really hard.
I have a lot of people that come to me and they'll ask me, and I don't know why they ask me this especially, but they'll say, hey, and I'm like, what's up? And they'll say, I need a man's opinion on this. Wait a minute, hold on.
Oh, that wasn't...
Hold on, wait.
That was a collaborative chuckle.
No, it's just funny because for several reasons, but also as anyone who knows me, my response to that is always, what? I can give you a man's opinion on this, me, but I can't give you the man's opinion on this because you're coming to me to speak for all men?
Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, we want these generalizations, and it's challenging, right? Like, an example I give a lot in this regard is if I have a meeting with somebody, and I have to meet them in a city that I'm not familiar with, and I have my little phone pulled up and I'm looking at my little walking path that it's telling me how to get to this coffee shop. And it says, take this little alleyway. It's like a walking alleyway. And I turn into the alleyway and there is a man standing there and he is in a trench coat, nothing on his legs, right? Why'd you chuckle?
Because in my mind I'm going, is he not wearing shoes in an alleyway?
Oh, well, shoes, no pants.
Shoes, no pants. Okay, I chuckled because I imagine the guy in a trench coat and bare feet in an alleyway.
Okay, shoes, but bare legs under the trench coat.
Yes. That's a flasher.
Right? So my brain takes this information in really quickly, right? And goes, don't go down that alleyway. So I walk another block up, I go around, and I find my coffee shop. Okay. So my brain went, that's a flasher.
Yep.
So now I'm sitting down, and I'm waiting for this man that I'm supposed to meet for my meeting. And in walks the man in the trench coat, no pants.
Yes.
He comes in, he goes, Julie, reaches out to shake my hand. I go, oh, hello, insert man's name. And he goes, I'm so sorry about this, but I spilled coffee all over my pants, right? And I didn't have time to change before we were supposed to meet. I didn't want to cancel. As he's saying this, he's taking off the trench coat. He's wearing a suit, like a jacket top, like dress shirt, and basketball shorts.
Okay.
He's like, I threw my basketball shorts on from my gym bag, right? Now, here is the pinnacle moment for my brain. My brain is now going to make a choice. I can take this new information in and recalibrate and recategorize this man as not a flasher. Or I can reject this new information and sit here and go, I'm not meeting with you. You were trying to flash people in the alleyway. So this thing that we do is, hold on, because I forget why we were talking about this. This is one of my favorite examples, but you brought something up that I was like, oh yeah, this sort of cognitive dissonance thing. What were we talking about?
We were talking about speaking for all men.
Yes, right? So it's like we want these generalized examples and our brain needs them, right? It was good, generally speaking, like it's a good, sound decision if you see a man in a trench coat with no pants under the trench coat.
Yes.
To maybe not walk up to him.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty, like, it's chill. And so our brain, we don't have the cognitive capacity to process everything at an individual level all the time, constantly. We just can't take in enough calories to make that happen.
Right.
So we do these shortcuts. Our brain has these shortcuts. And it makes things easier, right? It allows us to make these decisions. Generally speaking, it's beneficial in these like quick decision moments. But when you have time, the challenge isn't, oh, I need a generalized thing that men do. The challenge is I need to sit in the discomfort of this situation, and I don't like that.
And also sit in the discomfort of not having an easy answer.
Yes, that's what the situation is.
Yeah. And I also want to talk about to get to boundaries, because boundaries is really important, and setting boundaries and defining exactly what boundaries are.
Oh.
And I want to talk about situations where, with my own boundaries, where times in the past where I either haven't set a certain boundary or didn't honor my boundary, and later on going, ooh, that didn't feel good. It's a thing where, and I think this also ties into the coming out thing, where I think it was very, I like the point that you made of coming out doesn't just mean coming out as queer, or coming out as it doesn't have to relate to sexuality at all. It's anything that isn't maybe not something that it maybe isn't well received. If you're part of a racist family and you're dating someone that's of a race that they don't approve, that's you have to come out with that too. But I was thinking about times that I was in a situation where something about me I knew something about me wasn't known, and I decided not to share the thing. And people didn't know the fact about me, and they made a comment that was hurtful, but they didn't know it was hurtful because they didn't know that I was part of the group of people that they were disparaging in that moment. And it makes me think of someone, we had talked earlier about doing an episode on bisexuality. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think of if someone realizes they're bi, and it's a girl who's dating a guy, and they show up for a family gathering, and everyone's just having a great time. Everyone loves the guy or whatever. But then someone starts making some really insensitive, ignorant comments about bisexuals, not knowing that this person is bisexual, even though by all appearances, they're...
yes, the straight passing couple.
Yes, in their museum, so to speak, what's on display is just straight. And this person then has an option. Do you say something? Do you speak up? Or do you keep the peace with your family and not say anything? But I think that for me personally, and for others I'm sure as well, you always think that keeping the peace is better than speaking up. And you kind of forget the damage it's doing to you, the person, by letting that stuff go and just sitting with it until later you're sitting by yourself going, why do I not feel good?
Yeah.
because I spent hours letting someone just tell me I'm a horrible human being.
Well, and I think I want to just, you said this person has an option. This person has options. Mm-hmm. No, not one singular win condition, right? Like there are things you can do. There are more. There's options. It's not all or nothing. Mm-hmm. Please, if you take nothing else from any of these episodes, like, challenge your all or nothing thinking. It's not all or nothing. It's not now or never. It's, that's like it. That stuff is what our anxious brain tells us is true to force us into very frequently, like freezing and not doing, and or doing a very impulsive thing that then we feel that we wish we had not done.
So you're saying that people in a lot of situations go, I can either go left or right. None of those quite feel right. I'm just going to do nothing.
And
or choose one of those that I don't really like, and now no matter what I do, I'm still feeling a little bit, and you're like, wait, hold on.
Well, and it's also like, if I choose, it's much more like, okay, I have to choose left or right, and if I choose left, that's my destiny forever. And it's like, whew, it's not. Let's all take a big deep breath. Let's slow down.
I'm gonna nerd out a little bit here. This reminds me of in video games with D-pads where you could go up, down, left, or right. But sometimes if you press up and right at the same time, you go diagonal. Mm-hmm. But that's still only 8 directions. But then analog pads happen.
Yeah.
And the analog thumb sticks, you can go in any, there's so many different possibilities of directions you can go. And what you're saying is people view situations often as digital when really it's analog.
Yes, I would say that's true. And it's not something... I'm not trying to like get up here and lecture about this. It's again coming back to the example I gave about the man in the trench coat. Like, it's our brain's way of keeping us alive, mm-hmm. right? It is a such a regular reaction to have, and that path is paved so deeply into our brain that it takes intentional effort to shift and go, hold on, wait. I don't have to flip the dinner table over. My options aren't sit here and take this BS or flip the table.
And that's so important, even if you, and I want you to go deeper into that, but it's so important to even recognize that as a thing, because even if you don't know what to do, if you're in a situation where you're going, it's A or B, say nothing or flip the dinner table, and you're sitting there going, I don't like either of those, I'm never going to be comfortable and happy because there's only two options. And having someone say to you, there's more options. Even if you don't know what those options are right now, that gives so much more hope.
I'm sorry, my ADHD brain went, what if the dinner table was really heavy?
My ADHD
you like
brain
stood up and tried to flip it?
My ADHD brain went, the guy with the trench coat is Inspector Gadget. I've been seeing Inspector Gadget this whole time. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay. So there's not two options. And I want you to explain.
Sorry. The dinner table being heavy is cracking me up. Okay.
And you try to flip it and you
yeah,
can't.
You're just like, you know what, Uncle Joe? And then
Nothing
happens. You just grunt.
What do you do then? What do you do? What do you do? So, okay. So there's more than two options.
Yes.
And I think that this can kind of lead us into the conversation on boundaries, because it sounds like there's infinite possibilities on...
And there's amendments. And that's something that I think is like, I don't know. I think we forget. And it's very natural, right? But it's sort of like if I did stand up and try and flip the table over, and I couldn't because it was too heavy. But I made a big scene, and you know, the theory, the anxious brain, like our internal monologue, or apparently not everybody has an internal monologue, but like the pressure, the story is like, well, I'm forever going to be the person who made the scene. Somebody else is going to do something.
Yeah.
Like, we don't, our brain activates our emotional landscape to make it feel scary. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, this is scary. And then scary, we don't have a good measure. We don't get a lot of skill building socially on like the difference between scary unsafe and scary uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And so then it's like, oh no, I'm unsafe. This is bad. But we can do amendments. Like amendments are an option. We can go, you know, what Uncle Joe said got me all worked up, and I really wish I had done this a different way. And like maybe someone will receive it well and maybe they won't. But how do you feel about how you have approached this?
And that's what I really wanted to talk about, is that how do you feel thing? Because I think that, I can only speak for myself personally, but I think that gets lost a lot, of the how do you feel. And I think that since I've gotten better at prioritizing how do I feel, it also is, some people appreciate it and some people don't. Some people view that as selfish, of me really sitting with how I feel and speaking on how I feel and things that I have to do for me. People think it's selfish. People think that it's selfish to not sacrifice myself and my feelings for the sake of someone else's comfort. Mm-hmm. A lot of people view that as selfish, and I've gotten a lot of negative feedback from that, from people, or negative reactions for that, or critical reactions to that. But I also know how it feels to not do that.
Well,
and I don't like the way that feels.
Yeah. Well, and so like there's a couple things, right? Like I hear a lot of people talk about boundaries in the reels and on the internet and on TikTok. And I hear the way boundaries are talked about, and they're often misrepresented as this tool to change other people's behavior. And it's like, if you don't like something somebody's doing, cut them off. That's your boundary. You're setting a boundary. And it's like, please don't misunderstand me. Cutting somebody off, like going no contact is a boundary setting. But is it for them or is it for you?
You know, I hear that a lot. Now that you mention it, I hear that a lot, and a lot of my algorithm delivers to me a lot of really toxic relationship content. And when I hear boundaries being talked about in these reels, it's if I'm dating someone, they can't have friends. They're not allowed to have friends. And someone is like, well, that's not okay. Well, that's my boundary.
Right, that's not a boundary. If you say I am uncomfortable with them spending time with other people, then you can do that. Is it but like you don't that means that if they choose to spend time with other people, that's the choice they made and now they're on that side of the boundary.
Yeah.
And not I am going to bully you.
Yes.
About this. Like if they choose to have friends, that's their choice. And if that's on the other side of your boundary, then they aren't compatible with you.
So what you're saying is, it sounds like what you're saying is, a lot of times boundaries are like a lot of time controlling behavior and manipulation is misrepresented as, oh, it's just a boundary that I have.
And you're allowed to have it.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. But you're going to be lonely.
Yeah.
Ideally.
Or it's like...
if you're saying they're not allowed to have other social contact.
Right.
Like, I would challenge that maybe you are not in a place where you are emotionally developed to be in an intimate relationship.
So, so we're saying that I need to have your phone's password so I can look through your phone whenever I want to. That's a boundary that I have.
Well, was there an affair betrayal? Right? Like there are places where maybe that for a limited period of time as established with the support of potentially a couples therapist might be something that comes up as a boundary, as something that is like mutually and collaboratively determined as part of like the trust rebuilding and healing process. But just like to say that you want access, you don't want your partner to have any privacy ever and that's just your boundary. Like, okay. Well, your partner's going to choose to have, ideally, your partner is going to choose to have privacy, and that's going to make you incompatible.
Yeah. So talk about with boundaries. So I don't want us to get too far off this because this is such a cool thing that I want to really talk about. With boundaries, what do you mean when you... I want to go more into what you mean when you talk about boundaries being for yourself. Boundaries are for yourself. They're not necessarily for other people. Am I saying that? I may be saying that incorrectly. So I want you to explain it a little bit better than I can.
So when we think about setting a boundaries are about self-care, self-protection sometimes. They are about your emotional landscape and like the types of covers that you put around your emotional landscape that will let some people in and other people can't get in. Whereas a lot of times, a lot of the like pseudo-therapeutic advice reels will present boundaries as like a judgment of others as well as a like an attempt to change or control someone else's behavior. Mm-hmm. People are going to be who they're going to be. Full stop. Mm-hmm. They may bump into a boundary of yours and it may reflect back to them something about themselves that they go, ooh, I do not like the way it felt when I bumped up against that boundary and I'm going to make some changes, but that's got to be a choice they make.
I think a good example of this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, a good example of this is someone who smokes cigarettes. If I see someone outside smoking a cigarette, I'm not going to tell them, hey, you can't smoke a cigarette. But I'm also not going to stand next to them while they smoke the cigarette because I don't want cigarette smoke in my face. Mm-hmm. I will go somewhere else while you smoke the cigarette. And if it's a friend or someone who I'm friends with, smoke your cigarette. Just do it over there because I don't like the cigarette smoke. I don't like to breathe the cigarette smoke. So I'm not going to hang out with you outside of the restaurant while you step outside to take a smoke. And for me, my boundary is I don't want cigarette smoke to come across my boundary because it makes me feel sick.
Yeah.
But hey, if you want to smoke cigarettes, I'm not going to tell you, if you're my friend, you can't smoke. That's my boundary.
Right.
Just smoke over there.
And it can be your boundary.
Well, yeah, my boundary is, I mean, it can be, but for me personally, it's, yeah, I'm not going to hang out with you while you're smoking because I don't like that. Now that person can choose, I want to smoke less because I want to hang out with you more and talk to you more, so maybe I'll take less smoke breaks.
Yeah. Or like, you know, when you're talking about that, something that I think about is like, I ask people to not smoke before they get into my car. And like, I don't mean don't smoke ever, but like, please don't stand outside of my car, smoke a cigarette, and then get into it. And like, what I'm not going to do is explain why all the time. I have a very valid and good reason, right? But that doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
Right? My boundary is like, this is my vehicle that I own. It belongs to me. And I am going to take care of it in this way. And I understand that that might be inconvenient for some people. And it is not a personal judgment. I'm not attempting to bully or force someone to change anything about themselves. I simply won't be the person who drives.
This reminds me of something from my childhood. My dad used to smoke, and he quit when I was super young. But I remember that when he quit, he wanted to make sure that other people in the family who maybe came over to visit knew that. So once he quit smoking, he hated the smell of cigarette smoke, which is true for a lot of people that used to smoke and quit. It turns out they just can't stand the smell of it at all. So he went and bought a no smoking sign and posted it in our living room so that anyone who came over, it was the first thing they saw.
Yeah.
So they knew there's no smoking in this house.
Yeah, and like what's really beneficial about that, to think about it, is like he's setting a new boundary. Because maybe there used to be smoking in that house.
Yeah.
And so now he's communicating to people like, hey, there's a new boundary like here in my home. And he's not saying you're not allowed to smoke anymore, but he's saying this in this space that is mine, you are no longer allowed to do that.
Yes.
And when we think about it as physical, tangible space, we're usually pretty good at boundaries, right? Like, it's really rare that somebody's going to, I mean, it's not impossible, but like, if I say, hey, I don't want cigarette smoke in my car, most reasonable human beings are going to go like, all right, there will be, you know, I'm sure there will be a person or two at some point that really has a problem with it. And guess what? They're not around me anymore. That doesn't mean that I did something wrong or they did something wrong. It just meant that the way my boundaries were set up, they couldn't get close enough to me for us to have social intimacy, right? But when we start to try and think about the intangible, people talk about like taking up space. It's like a phrase that gets used in therapy a lot. Thinking about that intangible space of like, I exist, I'm a whole ass person, and I'm not going to shrink away and hide myself because this person wants to behave that way. So what's gonna happen is these two intangible spaces are gonna bang into each other. And generally, right, one person will have to back down. And somebody who has struggles with boundaries, they will find that they make themselves small and they feel run over. On a much like more therapeutic scale, something that we could talk about is like the impact that has on self-trust and the importance of self-trust in our sexual lives and our personal lives and our identities. So boundaries are about building that self-trust, and boundaries are about saying, you can come to right here, but with that behavior, you're going to bounce off. And I'm not saying you got to change a damn thing. I'm just saying that's where you can get to. Coming back to the metaphor I made about the museum earlier. If we think about this museum, like you need key card access to get to certain rooms, right? Boundaries are sort of like, who are you giving your key cards to? If somebody's acting foolish, you might not give them a key card. Now, the challenge that comes up is that all or nothing thinking, right? And people go, well, I gave this person a key card and they smashed everything in my personal vault. And you go, yeah, it happens. You got it wrong.
Yeah.
Come back to that idea about like, we can make amendments. We're allowed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And it sucks and it hurts and it's just rough, but it doesn't mean that you've done something wrong. And it doesn't mean that you should never give anybody a key card again. But it gives you that opportunity to kind of check and go like, maybe I need to think about sort of what kind of boundaries are important to me when I'm kind of evaluating who's getting key cards to what.
And is that, assume that's something that for someone coming to you for therapy, that's something that you'll work through in therapy, is just figuring out what your boundaries are and what's important to you and what's not.
Love a values exercise. Yeah, very, very much. And I think that's something that's coming up to kind of call back to this idea of like, I'm at the dinner table and what do I do? People feel guilty for not speaking up, or people feel guilty for speaking up. And a lot of times what they haven't done is like clarified for themselves, like, what's important to me at this moment. And what you highlighted when you gave that example earlier was that idea of like, what's important to me is keeping the peace. And if that's what's important to you, then you're doing the thing that lines up with what's important to you. But if what's important to you is to be more, to take up more space, for instance, to kind of go, no, I'm going to disagree with that. But you also want to keep the peace. If you think about it sort of like a trophy, like third, second, first, what might be happening is you're used to keeping first top tier as you're keeping the peace. And the space between, like, in order to do that, you have to not be true to yourself. You have to kind of shrink and make yourself small. And if you value being, like, taking care of yourself, and you value, like, celebrating your identities, and that doesn't mean you have to be, like, out there all the time, just celebrating yourself. If that's a value you have, these two things are not able to both be at the top of the podium at the same time. And what you often feel in your body is the dissonance, that discomfort of like one of these is being undervalued.
Yeah, sometimes you can't keep the peace out here while keeping the peace inside. Mm-hmm. And when you can't keep the peace in both areas, something's got to give, because keeping the peace within isn't always keeping the peace out here.
Yes.
And I've definitely been in situations like that, where I've been in a room full of people who I've been cool with, cordial with, civil with, and this room full of people, the conversation suddenly turns extremely homophobic. And me being just a straight dude, there's an assumption that they make that we're all in this homophobic club together. Mm-hmm. And the easy way to keep the peace externally is to just say, yeah, you're right. Funny joke, you're right. That's so true about those gays. But in doing that, I go against every single one of my values.
Right.
So I don't do that.
So here's the thing that I think, I talk a lot about how like language matters, mm-hmm. because how we tell the story and what parts of the story we highlight affect what we believe about ourselves, about others, about the world. So when we think about language, we've been using this phrase, keeping the peace. When we think peace means smoothness, what often comes up is peace gets conflated with other people's comfort. Mm-hmm. So everybody has to be comfortable. And I may have to swirl around like a giant cyclone tornado inside my body in order to keep everybody else's comfort going. But you know what? You can be peaceful and be in conflict. Mm-hmm. You can be peaceful and they can be as uncomfortable as all get out. Like, mm-hmm. It's fine. That doesn't mean you're not keeping the peace. It doesn't mean you're not being peaceful. You're simply being honest and like also keeping, as you described, like the peace in here. And I think we often, especially like the way that the stories get told socially, right? Of like, just keep the peace.
Right.
And it's like, well, I didn't bring it up. Mm-hmm. Right? Like often the reality is like somebody else brings it up.
Right.
You're referencing spaces where people view you as a straight man and then say homophobic stuff. people will look at me and where I live and go like, you want to hear some racist shit? And then when I go, actually, no, and here's all the things I think are incorrect about the statement that you've just made, right? The general consensus is now I'm the disruptor, right? And it's like, well, I didn't bring it up. You made an assumption about me that was incorrect. The fact that you feel uncomfortable about that does not mean that I'm disrupting anything. That's your discomfort. The way my boundaries are set up, that's a you problem.
Whenever first of all, wouldn't life be so much easier if people actually started conversations that way? Initially, someone leaned in and go, "You want to hear some racist shit?" That would be so much easier. Or someone said to me, "You want to hear some homophobic shit?" That would be so much easier because I could say no. But it's always them testing the waters of. Sometimes they don't even test the waters. Sometimes they just jump right in with, "Hey, you know what I mean? Hey, did you see the? Hey, did you hear about the? Hey, how about them?" And it's always.
I vividly remember, and I had a job once, somebody came back to my cubicle and said, I'm not saying it's about race, but, and then said some of the most racist shit. And I just went, and I'm sitting there, right? I'm in my early 20s. This is like an early job. And I'm sitting there just going like, oh no. I have to, and I just want to express to people out in the world in general, the like frustration that might come up for you. And I'm saying this because when I'm telling this story, this is what I felt in my body in the moment. Damn it, now I have to do work. Because you're in a position, you have a job where it matters that you have these thoughts, where it matters that you've said this thing out loud to me. And so now I have to go through the trouble of writing up the incident report, and I have to, you've put so much work on my plate. And I'm so annoyed. And it's not even about the fact that you're a racist. Like, that's not surprising, really. But like, you've put me now in a position where I have to follow through on my values, and it sucks because I'm tired. And I just want to like communicate that like, if that is what's coming up in your body, I see you. I get it. And we all can't, like, if that happens, that's one of the things that I think is good about therapy, is therapy gives you a space where you can say to somebody like, I just was too tired. I was too tired to fight with Joni about insert thing. I'm not, and it's like, that's okay. You're allowed to be too tired. That happens. Like, the challenge that many of us feel, or I guess to kind of come back around for you in talking about like boundaries and all of these things, is like, our boundaries do not have to be so deeply inflexible that we've just put a concrete wall between us and another person forever and ever. Because that, for most people, is what makes it feel so challenging. For like a lot of people, they're like, well, I don't want to cut this person off forever, but I really cannot deal with them right now because I'm tired.
It's that left or right. It's that digital versus analog. And it's like, with the work we're doing, I'm not asking you to do either of those things.
No. I don't think we talked about coming out very much.
We did, because
okay.
the purpose of this episode, I want it to be coming out, but also more so just interacting with your family during the holidays. And that can be coming out or choosing to not come out or choosing to somewhere in between that. And I think in order to recognize how to have an interaction with your family that feels good for you, you have to sit down with those boundaries and figure out what your boundaries are, so you can have an awareness of when those boundaries are crossed in a way that makes you uncomfortable. Because like I said to you before, a thing that I used to do a lot is keep the peace around me by making myself smaller. And not really recognizing how damaging that was to me internally, because all around me, the peace is, everything's peaceful. I'm not peaceful.
No.
But I can hide that. So for everyone else's sake. And I think another thing that I want to talk about and this can be the thing that we kind of end on, is going to be related to something else that happened in my life. It's how to deal with the situation when it arises. It can be a major or a minor situation. And I remember way back in the day, I decided that I wanted to help coach youth wrestling. Before you guys tune out or skip forward, I promise I'm going to bring this back around. We're going to go on another journey, so strap in. I'm taking you on a roundabout tangent here. But I remember I started coaching youth wrestling, and I was working with these kids, and we spent a lot of time working on one specific thing throughout the week. And this isn't going to make sense to anyone who doesn't wrestle, but just bear with me. Mm-hmm. One of the first things you learn is don't reach backwards. You don't need to know what that means. If you're curious, Google it. Don't reach backwards. Mm-hmm. So I'm working with these kids, and we're drilling it, and I'm really repeating, don't reach backwards, don't reach backwards. I have them practice. I correct them, hey, you're reaching backwards. Don't do that thing. Don't do that thing. We're working on this all week. Weekend time comes, there's a tournament, a youth wrestling tournament. I'm in one of the kids' corners, I'm coaching him, and first thing he does, reaches backwards, gets pinned immediately.
Yeah.
And I think back to that a lot because, yeah, I was a kid. What are you going to do? But I think back to that a lot because you can work on something and tell yourself you're going to perform a certain way in a situation, and you can have all the tools and all the knowledge you want, but you don't know how you're going to react until you're in that situation. You don't know how you're going to feel until you're in that situation, and you may react a way that later on you reflect on it and go, oh, I should have done better. I should have called out auntie, uncle, such and such. And now I'm part of the problem because I didn't stand up, and I am a bad person.
And I'm just watching, like internally, I'm just seeing that person shrink and shrink and shrink and feel so small and so bad.
Yes, because I read all the books and I did all the therapy and I know all the, I have, my best friend is trans and I didn't speak up for this awful comment, and my friend is this and that, and just all that guilt associated with that. And I know that because I felt that before in situations where I go, this is how I'm going to react. And then I don't. And later on I go, man, I wish I had that one back. Mm-hmm. So what I say all that to say that you can have all the knowledge and you can have all this kind of, this assurance that you're going to react a certain way in a certain situation, but you don't know if that's true until it happens. So give yourself grace.
So much grace. And also, like, you're touching on something that I think is important, right? Which is like, and I don't know for sure that this is true, but I feel pretty confident about saying it, that reaching backwards is like, it's like the natural thing you want to do with your body.
Yes. Yes.
It feels very natural. It's like if you weren't wrestling, it's what you would do if your body were in that situation.
Which is why you practice it, because you drill it so that you don't do the natural thing that you want to do, because that is the worst thing you can do.
So now we come back and I talk about the guy in the trench coat. We talk about these other, the all or nothing thinking, right? These are things that our brain, it's the thing that we're used to, right? It serves purposes. But the challenge is, like, where are you practicing doing something else? You can practice in therapy. And that's a big part of, like, working in a space where you know that you can practice. That doesn't mean that you're going to get it perfect, right? But what it means is you're starting to build that muscle. You're starting to, and simultaneously, you're working to unlearn the other reaction. And when you're doing those things together, then, like, you may get to a place where you it's not even necessarily that you're going to react differently. It's that you have a moment to decide to respond. Is that you've slowed down enough that instead of your brain immediately screaming and sending information to your emotional landscape and making you feel so freaked out that you freeze, you get dysregulated and you freeze, that instead you go, well, he's on one again. This ain't it's not about me today.
Yeah.
This is so-and-so's wedding. It's not about me today. Right? Or maybe you go, oh, I will regret it if I don't say something.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be uncomfortable for everybody in this room, but I have to be okay with that.
Yeah, and I personally have done a lot of work for myself to where I'm not perfect, but I have a system where it takes a lot to get me to a point where I'm not going to say that. It takes a moderate amount to get me to a point where I really speak out. No, that's not even true. It takes a little bit. It gets me to a point where I speak out, but I do have an internal kind of meter. And when that meter is full, I know myself and I go, I'm about to make this awkward for everybody because it's important for me personally to speak out and say the thing. And at some point, and this is just for me personally, at some point, it's not even about the individual anymore. It's not even about trying to change their mind or fix them because I don't have any interest in doing that. This is for my sake and also letting everyone else around know that this is not an okay way to speak to me, around me, about me. If
That's
nothing
a version
else,
of you setting your boundary,
exactly,
right? You're going,
exactly.
hey, this is what I'm about.
Exactly.
And if you want to be around me, the way to get on this side of the boundary is to not do what that is.
And go ahead, I'm sorry.
But, I think one of the things that comes up that when we think about all of this stuff and how it might relate to our own personal identities, there's something to be said to remember. I'm not going to expand on that is a perfectly valid response, right? Same as like no is a complete sentence. If you want to go out and you want to go to a family function and you want to tell them like, hey, like this is how I'm living my life. Insert queer identity, poly identity, insert, becoming a sex therapist, insert, whatever you're doing with your life that is something that like is not, visibly apparent that you want to share. And then people maybe start questioning you or making comments. You don't have to, like, you are not obligated to give answers. You are not obligated to satisfy everybody else's like discomfort about this thing.
And I think that this is going to lead to another episode topic is people who have this need to not be misunderstood, this fear of being misunderstood. So part of answering all those questions, part of answering statements as if they were questions is, but I don't want this person to think this about me when it's not true, or I don't want to be misunderstood, or I don't want someone to think I'm a bad person, or I don't want them to think I'm...
Yeah, well, when you have not had a lot of control over your life, you look for places where you can have a sense of control, and so you have this over control, overcorrective attempts at control. It sucks. It's hard. It's a really hard thing to accept that like people are going to think what they're going to think, and that communication is a collaborative process. And it is just as much their responsibility to make an effort to understand as it is yours to be clear and explain.
So I think that we can wrap on this thought, and this is going to bring it back to coming out again,
Okay.
is that if you have an opportunity to see your family, like you have a holiday coming up, you're coming home from college, you're going to a wedding. It doesn't even have to be holidays. Something where you're around a group of people. You have options, not just one option.
So many options. Yeah.
And at the extreme of those options on the spectrum, it's I'm gonna unapologetically just dump everything, and the other extreme is I'm just either not going to say anything and just play a role, or I'm just going to withdraw and not participate in the thing altogether. And there's a million other options in between. All of those options are going to have results. They're going to have outcomes that you're going to be forced to deal with.
Yeah.
And I think part of, like, when you make that decision, you have to consider those outcomes. And part of considering those outcomes is considering what your boundaries are and what your comfort level is.
And also, trust yourself.
Trust yourself.
Right? Because
Oh, that one's hard.
no, it's a good reason to go to therapy. Yeah. But like, if you trust yourself, then you go out there and you say a bunch of stuff, and then you go, oh no. Well, I can trust myself to navigate whatever fallout comes of this, which is like a really, really challenging thing. It's what makes people so cautious, is that they don't trust that they can handle what the possibilities of what could come. And, you know, something that on like, I guess a personal note of like coming out, something that I think about in regards to coming out is like the narratives around coming out have been crafted in such a way that like, because we have these marginalized identities and there is a lot of harm that can come to people, it is a very brave and strong and powerful thing to put that identity out into the world. And I do not want to diminish that, right? As a queer person, you know, I came out very young in a space that was not well received, but it felt very powerful. So I don't want to diminish that idea. But at the same time, the way that story sometimes gets conflated is it becomes, it starts to tell a narrative, we started to craft a narrative that it has to be an event. Coming out has to be an event. And recently I was at a family function with some cousins that I see like so sporadically, right? No, like I got nothing against them, but we were all sitting at a table and somebody said something, and one of these cousins who doesn't really know anything about me, we're not really on social media, we don't really cross paths, they just don't really know me, but they're sitting at the table with me and they said something about a straight line, and I just went, there's nothing straight about me, and like laughed, and they thought it was the funniest thing. And it was just sort of one of those, I didn't expand on it. I didn't, you know, it. And so there is a piece of the idea of like, what if we made coming out mundane? I don't know that that's the right answer. Again, to be clear, I don't think there is a right answer, but it is one of those many options, is that like, it can just be mundane. It can just be like, I like sneakers. I like to play D&D, and I like lots of genders.
What's funny about that to me is, in my mind, when you talked about making it mundane, my mind went to the exact opposite direction and was like, what if we make it obnoxious? Obnoxiously public, and we have sexuality reveal parties where you fire a giant cannon and different colors correspond to different, like,
your different flags.
Yeah. And you invite your entire family over and have a whole sexuality reveal party, and people bring gifts.
Yeah.
And then you just announce it.
And I think that's when we talk about the idea that like, you've got options. This is kind of what we mean. Like, there is a spectrum. There are so many ways that you can navigate this. And like, what feels good and true for you is like, that's the part of the journey that matters.
Yes.
And that's where you then set up boundaries and go, it feels good and true for me that I am very, like, for me, it feels good and true for me that I talk about this as if it's the most regular ass thing in the world. 'Cause to me it is, and it has been, and that's okay. And like, thinking about, for me, it is, fill in that blank. And that's going to guide all of the rest.
So I think that we did a pretty good job here. There is one topic that we didn't get to, but that's good, because I think this topic could actually fill a whole episode. So we're going to do a teaser for an episode that we haven't recorded yet. And I think next week, or maybe a different week, I don't know, but a week soon, we're going to talk about inconsistent narratives around sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to describe that in maybe what's your elevator pitch for inconsistent narratives around sex to convince people to tune in for the next episode?
Why is it okay for your sibling to talk about how they're raw dogging it for a baby at the dinner table, but you can't talk about insert kinky sex that you're having?
That is a great question, and I feel like you're going to have an answer.
I do.
That's excellent. Well,
answers, plural.
Answers, plural. Well, I think this was another great episode, and we can wrap it up now. And you know what I'm going to do?
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, after I jerk off. Bye.